So, it's been quite a ride. What have you thought so far?
Oh, I am absolutely thirsty for more of this game.
Well, you're in luck. While we may have finished the main game, there are a couple of things to look over. So, first of all, we're going to be looking at some of the trailers that were shown off. This game didn't have that much in the way of marketing. Most of it was just relegated to 2 different E3s. But first, we will be looking at the trailer for E3 2010, which was where most of the game's marketing was.
Control is an illusion.
Okay.
Politicians, corporations, activists.
Remember, no Russian.
To stop the rising tide of humanity from consuming the world.
It's been a while, but this is the original voice of Roderick Morton.
Okay.
To develop the technology that would save mankind. The Neo-Malthusians timed their attack perfectly.
Oh, Billingham, how we've missed you.
As they recast hope as hatred.
Little hokey, little overwrought, okay.
Genocide and reduce the world's population to mere half.
So here, Morton is pretty much, you may remember this from the, that plot summary that we read all the way back at video 2. That's pretty much taken verbatim from that.
And here's the part where they show you the whole game.
Well, like most of all of Act 1 and most of Act 2. And a couple of things that aren't in the game either. There's the rebreather mask.
Yep.
Bit of underwater combat. What's that? We'll get back to that later.
I'm almost mad at this point that there wasn't more to this game, because they were going somewhere with it.
Yeah, see, look what I told you. They always ended with a shot of the hydrokinesis, and that map is the challenge room, which we'll be looking at later.
Hope
Okay.
endures with your survival.
Get out of here, Overwatch 2. You can't see it, but there's a thumbnail recommending us for an Overwatch 2 gameplay trailer. It won't show up, but I just thought people should know. So, I'm pretty sure that Roderick Morton gets more lines in this one trailer than he did in the entire first version of this game.
Probably true. Do you feel like they had more recorded for the game than they actually got done?
Yes, certainly. I think that's the case for all games. But I think they may have been excessive. Oh, yeah, the whole voice thing, that reminds me. So, that's something I kept needing to bring up, but I never got a chance to in the main videos for this. So, you know how they changed Scoot's voice actor, Nathan Arion?
Yes.
So, they changed it to... I don't know how to pronounce his name. Oliver Vaquet? I think that's how you pronounce his name. So, Roderick Morton is also voiced by Nathan Arion, but they decided in Prophecy not to change the voice actor, but they expanded his role and decided that they were going to just completely have him do a completely different performance. So I would not want to be the intern at Dark Energy Digital who would have to call up Nathan and say, you know, okay, so we got some good news. We want you back for some more voice acting. But here's the thing. You know that one role where, you know, you put in all that effort and had to do a really complicated accent? You're not going to do that anymore, specifically because people hated you for that. No, it's that other role you did like 3 lines for. We need you to do that again. Oh, and do it completely differently this time if you don't mind, thanks.
I would have called him and told him that the tapes caught fire. Like, sorry, fire in the recording studio. We're gonna have to do it all over again.
And Nathan Arion, unfortunately, doesn't have much of a career besides this. He was like on one episode of, was it Coronation Street?
He did quite well in this.
Yeah.
He really did.
It was, yeah, he did a couple episodes of Coronation Street because, of course, he's a British actor. He's pretty much obliged to either do Coronation Street or EastEnders by law. Apparently, he has a cameo in the upcoming Wonder Woman 1984 as BDR driver number 2. So have a look out for him there.
Oh, I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah, he played the esteemed role of barman / estate agent in 3 seasons of Coronation Street.
I was the bartender.
and a real estate agent, too.
Oh, that's even better. Such an amazing career. I'd say Hydrophobia was probably his strong point without seeing the Coronation Street. So before we go too far down the rabbit hole, you sent me a still shot of whatever that was.
Yes. So that is that really caught my eye. That showed up in a couple of different versions of the trailers that have showed up at E3 2010. That is a mech design that looks like a bulkier and a little more angular version of Sarah, the final boss from Prophecy.
It does, yeah.
I mean, it has more of like a black, silver, and orange design, whereas Sarah was more like blue and gray, and
a little more GLaDOS.
Yeah, and you'll notice they both have that the outward eye that's used for a laser attack that this particular mech uses, which makes me think that perhaps this was meant to be either a recurring enemy or just a one set piece at one part of the game that was cut in XBLA and that was then repurposed because they needed a final boss for Prophecy, and they just used like a slimmed down version of that particular mech design because it doesn't really fit with the story at all.
Yeah, and the game, what we got of the game, other than Sarah, doesn't really have what I would call set piece bosses.
Yeah.
This is probably a scrapped set piece boss.
It was clear that they were going to in their original plans, like they were going to set up the superintendent as some sort of recurring villain. That was that guy that that guy that Bellingham presumably shoots dead at the end of the original ending. Who, by the way, I'm pretty sure the assets for him actually get reused for the elite soldiers when you fight Sarah. You're gonna have to go back through the footage and compare that. So anyway, so now it's time for another trailer. This is the E3 2008 trailer, which is very, very high concept. Not a lot of footage, but it sort of gets the idea going. This is back when they were still very early in development. Oh, thank God. I thought this was going to be an FMV. This one has a very different vibe to it.
Yeah.
Since this was 2008, they're very clearly aping BioShock.
Yeah. I'm getting that vibe. I'm getting a little Resident Evil with the lighting.
Yeah, in some early screenshots that they posted, it was also a lot of Resident Evil 4 vibe. Okay, so moving on. This is what I thought was a bit of content with those blue monitors. Also, I recorded all of this next footage in the wrong resolution. I'm sorry. So if you fail to reach that door in time, this area will flood.
Okay, don't panic. Find the emergency release. You can do it.
And that's when you go over to the blue monitor and activate the emergency release. This is what I thought was the cut content I was talking about a couple videos ago.
Okay.
So my mistake. So here's the E3 2010 gameplay version of that scene, which is similar, but it has one pretty critical difference. I wonder if you could spot it.
This isn't happening.
Well, she's having a freak out for one.
Go, Kate! Run! Run!
Oh, Jesus!
Kate, don't panic! Find the emergency release. You can do it!
Also a lot of motion blur effects. Basically, this early version really emphasized her aquaphobia a lot more.
That's it. Go, Kate!
Like, they left in the take, but they took out a lot of the motion blur and extra things on XBLA.
Kate, you're almost there.
And then she gets flushed.
I also figured out how to stealthily take people out with the gel rounds. You don't actually shoot them. You shoot the floor, and it works like a claymore. You detonate it. Which is completely counterintuitive considering that the gel rounds have a lock-on feature. So you have to counterintuitively avoid the lock-on feature that's built into the game and shoot at the ground. Also, here's some great AI.
What was that noise?
Remind me never to get on your bad side.
And you get a medal for going through that area stealthily. So this next room, this is back where you get that big info dump with Roderick Morton.
Okay.
So, first of all, you can actually see Roderick Morton's face on one of the monitors.
Any more than I can appeal to the intellect of a rat.
Right over there.
So I tell you this as a matter of cold, irrefutable fact. You believe the device in a
Also, if you use the CCTV cameras, you can actually start flooding this room much earlier than intended. And you can use that to set up a little ambush. In fact, there is a medal that you can get for doing that. It's called Maelstrom.
source of purification, whether it be oil, seawater, or blood.
So there's our objective over there.
You won't have your objectives.
Unfortunately, you still have to shoot out that panel on the wall in order for it to complete the objective. But it does change, as you can see, the dynamic of this fight.
While the failsafes are in place.
That is clever. Okay, so there's alternate approaches to some of these.
Yeah, and there are multiple panels that you can shoot out and basically flood this entire area. Which, if you remember, we do have to flood this area anyway, but it floods much sooner this way, and you get the tactical advantage.
And you get to see more cool underwater combat.
Oh yeah, more underwater combat is always great.
I did love this part of the game.
Yeah, this
it's
was
very well done.
Yeah, it's always great, and I always appreciate that all of the little incidental containers and everything like that. They all have they all have accurate branding with the Queen of the World logo, and usually have QOTW on the side. Like I noticed, like even the ammo textures have that. Like when I was going through the footage.
That's neat. That's really good attention to detail.
Anyway, here's what you've all come for: the challenge room. I didn't realize when I was recording this that this was at 30 frames per second. I'm sorry, but as you'll see, I wanted to keep this particular footage. So this is what you unlock after you beat the game. And on XBLA, it's the only time that you get the chance to use the waterbending. And it actually has its own little cutscene to start. You may recognize some of these shots from the E3 2010 trailer that we saw earlier.
Yeah.
From slightly different angles. So this is like a horde mode. Although there's always a set number of enemies, it's all about how quickly and how much environmental destruction you can cause in a single round. So it's not so much, you know, survive for X number of minutes, it's kill 10 enemies and do so while wrecking as much shit as possible.
Clever.
So this took a couple of tries. Like I spent a good hour on this before I got a take that I got, because it's you know, you got to survive 5 waves on 1 life. It's pretty standard horde mode stuff. Although I'm not sure how popular horde modes were in 2009. I don't really pay attention to that kind of challenge mode gameplay, more like in the time attack stuff. But essentially, you have ammo that spawns, respawns, and you can use the crates everything else with hydrokinesis. The one thing that's really annoying, though, is that the gaps in between here are just wide enough that Kate will sometimes grab onto the ledges instead of making the gap instead of making that gap cleanly, and it wastes a good 10 to 15 seconds because of how long her animation is, which in a mode like this where you're trying to kill a set number of enemies as quickly as possible is really long.
They do give you an ample amount of ammo for this, I think.
The ammo keeps respawning, yeah.
Sure.
Like I think it's on a set timer, like it is on like a standard multiplayer map or something. I usually just play with hydrokinesis activated by default, and usually don't bother shooting unless I'm taking cover. I just find it easier to manage that way.
It does remind me of what did they call it in Resident Evil 4? The professionals,
mercenaries.
Mercenaries. That's what it was.
Yeah, mercenaries started in I think Resident Evil 3.
Yep.
And then like earlier there was like the fourth survivor thing with Hunk. That was the inspiration for that. But I think RE4 was when it first really started to take off with mercs. Yeah, see right there. Look at that.
Yeah. It's like she staggers off the platform.
It's like that could have been fixed so easily with just like a couple of pixels, either way. Sorry, you were saying something?
Lost my train of thought. This is fascinating that they did have the water bending in the original version, and it didn't make it into the game proper. Like it's limited to the challenge room.
Yeah. It's possible that they intended for it to be in the story and just ran out of time, but continued hyping it up anyway. I mean, it's like they knew that in all the trailers, like the only time they have it in there is when it's in the challenge room. And if you look very closely in one of the trailers, they try to hide it at one point by like photoshopping in an objective marker at one point just to make it look like it's part of the story. It's kind of adorable in hindsight, but yeah, that was a pretty cheap move.
Check out this cool mechanic, yoink.
Although, in fairness, I mean, hydrokinesis wasn't exactly that fun to use in the original either, so...
So compared to Prophecy, is the hydrokinesis chunkier in this game? Does it not feel right?
Well, it's also because of the controls,
yeah.
And just because of how awkward the Tower of Water is to control with the right stick. Like, I've also tried... It's more of a gamepad problem, because I've had the same issues trying to play this with a gamepad. Like, the gunplay is fine with a gamepad, but hydrokinesis is not. So while we're here on these rounds, I guess it's also worth pointing out that this game, and I guess the engine and Infinite Worlds itself, came about because Blade Interactive was sick of being a developer and dealing with publishers, particularly with the snooker titles, and to a lesser extent the racing games, because they had to deal with a bunch of rotating publishers on their snooker contract. So around the mid-2000s, they announced that Blade Interactive was going to become their own publisher, and so they split off their game design team into Dark Energy Studios, who would become a first-party developer for Blade.
Okay.
And then it's at that point they announced their intention to make, a brand new engine that would revolutionize water physics. This was around 2006, 2007. And then everything went dark, media-wise, until that first trailer that we saw that announced both Hydrophobia as like a teasing concept and the Hydro engine.
And then they bit off more than they could chew.
Yeah. I have been trying to get in contact with Rob Hewson, who was the narrative director and one of the co-lead designers, but I was unsuccessful because it does. I mean, from what little we know about this game's development, it seems fascinating, and what little is left about about the in-betweens, about pre-release. I would be, I don't know, Mr. Houston, if you're somehow watching this, feel free to message me on Twitter at TEMReviews, TEMREVIEWS. I know you have a Twitter account. You go to Manchester game cons all the time.
I'm not stalking you or anything. Just seriously get in touch.
Not yet. I was considering it, but I decided it wasn't very nice to do. So yeah, if you hit the time limit, yeah, it's game over, same as if you died. Thankfully, it's only 5 rounds.
Should have had an unlimited mode. But...
yeah, well, there's practice, which is the equivalent of an unlimited mode, but it doesn't score you.
Aww.
Although, you should stick around, because after this, I'm going to show you a hilarious blooper in one of my failed takes, which... If you remember a while back, I was messaging you about a particularly hilarious bit of gameplay that I was very proud that I got on film. That was it.
No.
That's it. That's what I was referring to. So, so be sure to stick around for that. It's going to be worth it. So overall, how do you think this LP has gone compared to our previous non-something awful attempts at Let's Plays?
I think this has gone pretty well. I think you picked an appropriate title for it. This is a fascinating bit of gaming history. It's a story about a story, I guess is the way I would describe it. I feel
sorry,
like,
go ahead.
Seriously, the game's only like $5 on Steam, we were saying.
Yeah.
And like $2 for the Xbox version, but seriously, play the Steam version, play Prophecy.
And I think despite itself... Oh, also, yeah, I completed that. Also, despite itself... it's an extremely important game, despite all of its attempts not to be.
It's the best, worst $5 you'll ever spend.
Oh yeah, I'm in 1900th place alongside Booker DeWitt and Hero Protagonist. All right, so here we go. Here's the hilarious blooper that I ran into. So this was I was having a pretty good streak. This was actually some of the highest score that I got. I was, doing pretty well. I had a nice flow to the combat here. But, unfortunately, I got stuck.
What?
I think it had something to do with Hydrophobia animation. I got stuck for about 5 minutes. And despite being out of the open and having 2 enemies shooting me, they couldn't kill me.
I don't... What? She's not even really T-posing to assert dominance.
She's stuck in a single animation, and eventually, once the water level reached a certain amount, it triggered one of her swimming animations, and that broke it. But it was legitimately it was there for 5 entire minutes.
Something to
of
do
two
with
two enemies desperately trying to kill a woman in midair and not being able to.
Something to do with the plane between water and ground or something. Yeah.
So this is the dev feedback option. This is the equivalent of the listening post in Prophecy. So I'm gonna give my genuine feedback. Gameplay was fun. Story, no, I'm gonna vote that down. It was definitely on the cheesy side.
A little bit.
Graphics? Yeah, I'll vote that up. Oh, definitely because of the water, though. Nothing else. Audio. That's definitely voting down. I had to fix so much of the audio during this Let's Play. Absolutely low quality. Navigation. Yeah, definitely because of the waypoints.
Fair.
And I was a little indecisive about the controls.
I don't blame you.
It could be either way. I guess effective? Maybe? And also, I decided to vote it down as well. Because of the button layout.
So you can vote multiple times on this?
Yeah, and it would send it back. It would send it back to the server that Dark Energy Digital had set up. Because originally, the Hydrophobia listening post was entirely on their website. And so with Prophecy, they were able to set up a new system entirely in-game where users could vote up or down depending, and entirely within the game menu without having to open a separate browser for the website.
Okay, like, and they compiled all of that, took the feedback, went back to the boards.
That was with the listening post.
Yep.
They didn't do it. The feedback, they would have used the feedback for a potential sequel if Prophecy had actually sold well enough to save the company, which it didn't. Dark Energy Digital went under in 2012. They filed for bankruptcy. They attempted to sell both the Hydrophobia IP and the Hydro engine to any interested parties, but no one wanted it. Not even the engine, which kind of surprises me.
That is kind of shocking.
I guess that developers just wouldn't want to deal with the hassle of water that flows so freely and chaotically in levels. I guess they'd want to have a more scripted environment.
Would kind of make sense in the context of the games. I feel like the game and the engine were meant to dovetail into each other for this product in such a way that it wouldn't have really worked elsewhere unless you had something that was a contained environment separate from the play area that wasn't affecting you directly, or they had a particular set piece to use it on and they wouldn't use it elsewhere in the game.
Well, there was one other game that used that combination of Infinite Worlds and the Hydro engine.
Really?
That game was WSC Real 11, which was the last game in Dark Energy Digital's snooker contract with the World Snooker Championship.
So I might be confused about what snooker is here. I might have to Google snooker, but it required a fluid physics engine.
Yes, apparently. I guess that I don't know.
Okay, it had one last run, so I mean, I guess the question is, when are we gonna Let's Play World Snooker Championship?
Well, unfortunately, the Xbox 360 version was only released in Europe, and from what I could tell, it's extremely hard to find on PC. So we'll have to see. Maybe I'll do that on a stream sometime if I can find a cheap copy of the PC version. There's no way I'm modding my Xbox 360 for PC game for European games.
No.
But our next Let's Play is going to be a Wii game, and I think you're gonna like it, even if it does have some bugs of various kinds.
Well, at least it's a complete game, right?
Yes.
Oh, thank God.